Good afternoon. I'm Stan Goldstein with Kates Boyleston Publications. Welcome to the webinar, How to Manage Your Cemeteries Move to the Cloud, presented by PlotBox. Today, we're happy to be joined by Neil Schering, Head of Marketing for PlotBox. Neil will be discussing the 10 most important steps to take when managing your cemeteries move to the cloud. During the webinar, Neil will be posting 2 polls that he will ask you to make a choice on. We will then show the results of those polls. Also, during the webinar, please submit your questions as you have them. Neil will answer them at the end of the webinar. Neil, please take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for having us. As Stan said there, my name's Neil. I'm joining you from PlotBox today, and we're hoping you guys get some great value from today's session. So at PlotBox, we've implemented many changes, change programs, and we know, to be quite honest with you, how disabling it can be, and for lots of reasons. The task can seem so daunting. So we want to help take away some of that, and what we can promise for you guys today is that you're going to walk away with 10 actionable steps that for any cemetery, regardless of your size or your stage in your experience, the stage on your change journey or your experience, you're going to be able to implement. It's a session that gives you practical takeaways to get the stuff done that you want to get done. So beyond today, if you want to connect again with me later, my email address is neil, neil.schering, SHERRIN, @plotbox.io, and that will be on the screen at the end. So feel free to reach out to me at any time. Many death care facilities today, they're starting to focus on digital transformation. These are very often well-established organizations, as you guys will know, that are having to reinvent processes and operations using data and technology. That could be cloud computing, it could be software adoption, mobile apps, data analytics, digital mapping, and so on. So when we're out speaking to cemeteries across the US, we very often hear, we know we need to do something, but we don't know what or in what order. So being that change is so hard, it can be even harder for an industry that arguably in many ways hasn't evolved significantly in a very long time. So for us, a fundamental shift is needed. That essentially requires a realignment of how your employees see your business and their roles, how you guys go to market, how you engage customers, both pre-need and at need, and how you use technology to facilitate that in either the cemetery grounds or in remote locations. That's where change management comes in. It's the process by which you will enable all those good things to happen. So getting people on board requires strong leadership and must have the full support of those at the top of the business. If you're not the leader of your organization, we'd encourage you to reach out and gain support from the management team. It's essential as a starting point. Without that top level buy-in, it's not sustainable, and proper change will never realize its full potential. And it's true of technological change, because it's not just about the impact of one specific team or department. Technological change often means that the impact transcends the organization and means that inter-team processes need to change. And that's why you need that very top level buy-in, because it's not just about one individual, one team. It's about how the whole organization operates. So it needs sanction from way above. So for your team, this is their chance to stand up and make a very significant contribution to the future of the cemetery beyond their day-to-day roles. For sure, you're going to have many in the early stages signaling to you that they want to cling to those spreadsheets, those lock cards, those paper maps, legacy tools and processes. But given some time to reflect, we're betting, and we quite often see that with some time to reflect, many agree that the status quo is antiquated. So given that set the scene a little, we're going to move on to our first poll, and then we're going to cover the guiding principles of change management. So Stan's going to take us through this first poll here, and the question is: are you currently undertaking a digital transformation project in your cemetery? Just answer any question, any of the answers there.
Okay, Neil, can you see those results?
No.
Okay, I will close the poll. I'll close the poll in about 15 seconds, and then the results should come up.
No problem. Okay, so we've got the results in here. I don't know if you guys can see them, but I'm going to read them out here. So 50% of you guys are saying that yes, you are currently in some degree of a transformation project. 17% no, and 33% saying you will be soon. So a very, very heavy steer to either being in the process or teeing that up right now. So let me just flick back over to the other screen and just get us back on track with the next question, the next topic. So starting with the vision, it's essential. You know, it's a bit of something of a cliche, but you have to start here. So for cemeteries to be successful in their change management aspirations, it requires a clear vision and of what you're going to achieve. Of course, everybody knows of Steve Jobs. He once put it like this: if you're working on something exciting, something that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you. So if a vision is well established and well communicated, well understood with its organization, it brings its people with them rather than you having to push the employees towards what you're trying to do. So at PlotBox, for instance, we're guided by a statement which essentially says, we understand the trauma and loss and the burden of the associated processes around death. And we know that we can help take away some of the pain, both for the families and those that serve them. So for us, no matter what initiative or project or product we're working on, we're always asking ourselves, how does this technology, how does this development or process that we're trying to bring about in our products help alleviate some of the pain and making some of the pain in dealing with death? And that's at the heart of what we're encouraging here. What change does for customers, for your team, for your community and your bottom line. For digital change, it can positively impact all of these things. So there's 2 points here. Firstly, change doesn't always end up being quite the way we originally thought it might. That goes for both the journey and the end state. So don't set your idea in stone. You need to allow for alterations along the way, and that's healthy and natural. But you need a clear vision to get everybody moving in the same direction. Secondly, without the vision acting as your guiding star, you run the risk of confusing or worse, alienating the team. In the drawing above, let's look at the compromiser here. Unable to make decisions. This guy's abdicating to the team. Or the drill sergeant. Nobody likes being dictated to on a whim. Or the parrot, the worst one in my opinion. This guy repeats the other ideas, even if they contradict other people's ideas, even if they contradict each other. So PlotBox tip, you need a roadmap and a GPS to make your goal and position clear. And this is something of an analogy. Roadmaps let everybody know where you're going, and a GPS tells you where you are. Use this principle to keep your position and progress well understood. You can do it in different ways. You could buy an app, you can print it off and put milestones up on the wall. Just make sure that it's visible and accurate every day of the week, and that everybody has access to see what the vision is and where you are on that road towards it. So thinking about your people, technology may enable change, but the success of that change ultimately depends on whether the employees embrace it or not. If you bring in a new solution, it's not adopted, it's not well used, then it's not a solution. So go to long lengths to ensure you're thinking about the people implications of what you're trying to drive. We've all got people that will both help you through the change process and people that will resist you. That's natural and that's common throughout any organization in the world. You want to minimize the resistors and maximize the drivers. So a tip, note this down. We know that it's a common trait for cemeteries to have staff who fear digital. You've got to bring them with you on the journey. It's going to take energy. It's going to take your energy. We suggest starting slowly, but regularly demonstrating the positive impact the technology is having on the business, the positive impact it's having on their roles, and indeed their future jobs, their future prospects in terms of employment. Employers in any field are going to want staff who are competent in using technology tools. So bring your people with you and outline the benefits to them as individuals as well as the organisation. Number 3, this is going to take time. So some technology change can happen very quickly in the right circumstances. However, changing the way the cemetery staff think about their roles, the business and the culture, that doesn't happen overnight. After all, many cemeteries have been operating this way for decades, some for even centuries. So sometimes they've done so at a relatively slow pace. So why should they change now? The time required to change hearts and minds must be built into your change management plan. Don't assume that you think that a certain part of a project is going to take 4 weeks and then in week 5 we're going to shift to the next part. You need to probably add in some buffer time around everything. Things inevitably take longer and are sometimes more difficult than you think, so you need to plan accordingly. So our tip on this one, again, take a note, be ambitious, but be reasonable in your expectations. At PlotBox, we're champions of wholesale digital reinvention. I mean, that's what we do and that's what we offer, that's what we sell. But you need to be realistic and do it at the pace at which your management team, your staff, and your other resources will allow. Every cemetery's specific situation will be different. For instance, the quality of the records, the acreage, the quality and form of the maps that you have, how much pre-need you do, and so on. How many sales counsellors, family service people do you have? Are they writing contracts? Are they targeted and commissions and so on? There's a lot of things that need to be worked into the equation. So that's going to dictate as to the quality of the data, especially. It's going to be a big contributor as to how slow or fast change can happen. So don't look at the cemetery down the road or in the next town and think that because they did something in a given period of time, whether you felt it was too long or too quick, that it's going to be the same for you. You could be quicker, you could be slower, and that's okay. You've got to take the time to really think about what might hold you up. And the more honest you are now, the better your change process will be. The goal isn't to change at the most rapid time. It's rather than do the most important. It's more rather to do the most important changes first, in a way that your organisation can handle. So Stan's going to bring us up with our next poll here, and this is regarding our stakeholders. So who do you believe is or will be most affected by your proposed change? Is it your employees? Is it a manager, owners, or your board, your customers, or your suppliers? So who's affected the most by the change that you're proposing to initiate? And we'll just give you guys a few seconds to get your answers in there and for the results to be collated. Okay, here's the results then. So most people at 69% saying the employees will be most affected, managers the 8th, owners or the board 0, customers nearly a quarter at 23% and 0% on suppliers. So employees and customers the lead there, and that's something we probably hear quite a bit. So that's good to know that you guys are on the similar road, so to speak. Okay. So that's going to help us with some of the later content. Okay. Okay, so thinking about our stakeholders then. So to really succeed with change management, cemetery owners, managers, they need to identify the people who are going to be most affected by the proposed changes. And we've just seen your guys' take on that. Employees at probably 69%, I think, and then nearly just shy of a quarter on your customers. So, shareholders, suppliers, customers, they'll all be affected by some degree. For instance, the change could have important implications for how and when suppliers deliver goods and services. And we know in this example, we probably feel that suppliers are on the bottom end of the scale, or how your customers communicate with you. So do you have any public search facility for your cemeteries in order for the public to access records? So that's customers communicating and interacting with your data. Do you have a website or some kind of information where daily services and your event schedule is publicised rather than having people call in? So there's lots of ways in which change can affect the communication that your customers do have with you. So our tip on this one, make a list of all your key stakeholders. There's a bunch of them there on the screen. Anybody and everybody that will be affected by change. And from the outset, involve them all. If you've a board, make it a firm and regular agenda item. Make sure the board understand the cost, energy and benefit of the change, and make sure that they're doing their part too. Lean on them for advice, push them to enable change to happen, however it's needed. That's what they're there to do. They're there to give you effective governance and leadership. So make sure you avail of that support and experience that you have there, even if they're not involved in the day-to-day operation or understand the intricacies of the change. As long as they're bought into the vision of what you're trying to do, and lean on them for any support that you can get from them. Okay, so this is a big one. This is trade-offs. In simple terms, a trade-off is where one thing increases and another thing must decrease. That's it, put in very, very crudely. All change processes are going to have knock-on effects. If you devote people and a budget to one project, some other project or process will suffer. That is inevitable. We just implemented a project with Rookwood General Cemetery down in Sydney, Australia, and they said that one of the most important parts of their project was that they had the HR plan right. So they had a plan for all of their people in the business, all of the stakeholders, to accommodate the projects being implemented. So what they didn't expect, so Rookwood, by the way, they're the sixth biggest cemetery in the world on acreage, hundreds and hundreds of acres. And they did their project in 9 months. So they went from a very antiquated system, a lot of paper records, a lot of double entering data and so on, and transformed into a very modern, efficient organization. So what they didn't expect was for everybody to go around doing their jobs as normal, and then we bring in this new thing called PlotBox, and people spend a couple of hours on it a day or a week or whatever their role might be. They said, right, okay, so they agreed with PlotBox ahead of time. This is the schedule. This is what the project's going to look like in month 1, month 2, month 3, and so on. And this is what PlotBox are going to do in that first month. This is what Rookwood General Cemetery are going to do in that month. And then they identified the key people in each month and the amount of hours that was going to take. And they then rejigged those people's roles for the duration of the project. So there was no excuse when it came to the project being implemented. Oh, we can't do that because, or we need to change the timings of the project, or we need more time or less time on this. Of course, small adjustments will always need to be made, but the point is they had a plan for all of their people throughout all of the organisation in every team to accommodate what they needed to get done. It's absolutely essential. So when you're planning change for your cemetery, identify all the areas that will be effective and seek to quantify that, and be prepared for the trade-offs you're making. So this triangle thing on the screen, it's so helpful. It's really simple. It's really clear. It's almost impossible to have all three of those things. So to have things done quickly or fast, to have them done cheaply and good quality. So there's always going to be a trade-off. You can have fast and cheap, but it's probably not going to be good quality. You can have fast and good quality, but it's probably not going to be cheap. Or you can have good quality and cheap, but it's not going to be done fast. It's probably going to be expensive. So that meeting point in the middle is impossible. So for whatever you guys know you've got on, other than a change process, you need to think about what your change process is going to have regards implications on what you're doing elsewhere, and prepare for that, plan for that. Trade-offs are normal. You've got to be prepared for them. Okay, so let's consider culture and personal priorities. So 2 points to make here. First, cemeteries that have been around for decades, especially, they'll have a very strong and engaged company, ingrained company culture. And by that we mean the unwritten rules, the expectations and norms that nobody thinks about or even really notices. They can all help or hinder you, and every business has one. No business doesn't have a culture. The chairman of Southwest Airlines put it like this: culture is what people do when no one's looking. So what are the behaviours? What are the expectations? What do people value in the business? And that's the sort of thing that defines your culture. So here's our tip: you need honesty. You need honesty in your team, And let's be honest, not everyone is honest all of the time. And I'm not for a minute suggesting that everybody's lying all the time. But complete and full honesty is a very different thing. So you need to create an environment. You need to create a safe space when you're talking around this project and you're talking about the real implications of change and the real need for change, that people feel empowered to speak and they feel it's safe to air their voices and so on. So by that we mean things like hold regular one-to-ones between staff and management and define what those one-to-ones are. Speak with every member of your team on what they think lies within the existing culture. And what about that culture that's going to be helpful? And then what about that culture do you think is going to hold them back? So you're teasing out information from your staff as you go through this process. They feel like they're being listened to. You're getting good feedback, and nobody's being criticised or berated for airing their views. So do this with everybody. It is time consuming. One person might not do everybody in the organisation, but have the relevant people within the company execute these one-to-ones and do them regularly. And you're going to learn a lot. You're going to bring a lot of people with you, and you're going to be able to dispel a lot of myths and a lot of fear around change by doing this. So make a list of everything that comes out of those one-to-ones. Share the results with the whole group in a sensitive fashion. So it might be on a Friday afternoon after all these one-to-ones have been done, maybe at the end of the month, something like this. Get some food in, I don't know, have some drinks or whatever it might be, and just talk around the findings, the concerns, so that the people can see that collectively the business is listening and these issues that they're bringing up are being addressed. And like I said, you're able then to distill, disable a lot of the unfair criticism or some of the fears of that might not really be rational or whatever it might be. So identify the challenges and create a consensus in that group for what you need to try and avoid as a company and what you need to try and leverage. So a company might be particularly prone to dropping the ball in a certain area. You need to be able to have that group conversation and say, we're typically not good at this. We're not quite as sharp as the average cemetery or the cemetery in the next town or whatever it might be. But we are really good at this. How can we get more of what's going right in this area of the business into another area of the business? And then second, now this is a biggie, personal agendas. They're going to hinder your efforts too. So for instance, digital implementation is going to make inevitably one team's work, inverted commas, less important. So the head of that team may resist. Equally, digital change process might mean more work for one team or person, and those staff may object too. So you're going to be trying to tease that out from those people and try and identify the motivations for their resistance. So cliche alert, change is a journey, and it's like riding a bus. So some of your staff are going to want to get off the bus, okay, and that's if they're not comfortable with it, no point trying to keep them if they're not going to ever get on board with what you guys are trying to do in terms of your transformation. And you'll want others to join the business too. So write this down. Where it's appropriate, find a way to measure the success of each person or each team's work in a way that's linked to the progression of the digital journey. So, for instance, each person might have as part of their personal development plan or their KPIs or whatever it might be, however they're measured in terms of success, some kind of indicator that says, yes, you are making a contribution to this project through X and Y. And it gives you that forum, then that way to have the conversation around their support for the project. You are able to spend X amount of hours on X, Y, and Z this week. You help clean up this amount of data or whatever it might be. Let's have a conversation about that for the good or the bad. You might decide in terms of incentivization to offer additional rewards, recognition or incentives to those people. All of those are going to require, setting personal objectives and a personal development plan. And that can be simple, but write it down and have both parties sign it. The effect of these are that people are now more likely than not to be on board with the journey, as they now know how they're going to be measured, how they're going to be rewarded. But remember, account for the trade-offs. That is absolutely inevitable, and that goes for the individual in terms of what, not just the company, in terms of what the company or the cemetery can do, but there'll be trade-offs for individuals as well. It will mean them doing less of something else for a period of time, whatever it might be. So prepare for them and help them prepare for that as well. Okay, communication. So a clear vision of your goal won't help you if you don't share it. So you need to share that vision. No point in the senior management team having a great vision and it's locked away in the management folder and we wheel it out at our monthly meeting and we talk around how good or bad we are at this. So you've got to get that vision out there and you've got to have the employees embrace it. You know, as you're outlining that vision, and that vision is establishing itself, you almost kind of have to over communicate it, ram it down their throats, and I don't mean in any inappropriate way, but it's just got to be so overtly clear as to what you're trying to do. Take every opportunity to have that vision shared. At PlotBox, we've seen there isn't a single best way. We undergo a lot of change. We're a growing business, and we're growing in different geographies, and that means a lot of change all the time. And a lot of process refinement as we bring new people in and we expand and so on. So what it depends on a number of variables, but the stats around communication: 55% of our communication being body language, 38% of it being tone of voice, and only 7% is the words we use. And I hope I've got my maths right. I can't guarantee it. But that's why at PlotBox we use a range of methods in terms of this communication. So we hold kind of town hall style meetings. We'd hold short stand-up meetings, literally standing up and kind of communicating over short periods of time. Email, of course, but we definitely try not to let email dominate. Newsletters, showcasing successes and sharing challenges, intranet sites, internal social medias and so on, video conferencing like Google Hangout or GoToMeeting like we're on now, or Zoom, or whatever it is that you might use. Utilize the right communication that you need. So tip on this one. So the phrase "you can't over communicate," it does come to mind, and I said it there earlier on. But what you need to do is also ensure that the people receive the message. So yes, the management team, they can communicate the vision, they can communicate what we're doing, but you need the people to receive the message and for them to be open to that. So consider holding a brainstorm session on communication and give them specific stimulus to help them generate new ideas and how to be better and how to receive information, rather than just draining the brain of ideas and concepts. And it's a real value add when you're able to do that right. So if we mentioned earlier on Rookwood General Cemetery in Sydney, Australia. This is some photographs we took of some soft communication these guys did in terms of communicating with their staff in a soft way around what PlotBox was going to do for them. So in the top left there, we've got Jim Carrey. I think that's Ace Ventura. So with our new IT system, departments be able to share information. So yes, there's a new tool and it's going to help our teams work in less siloed ways and for us to share the right information at the right time to the right people. We've got something there from Scarface, I think that is. So with our new IT system, we'll have better access to reports that our CRO will love. So management reporting, live inventory status, all of these good things, trust reports, commissions reports, whatever it might be. And you've got Rowan Atkinson there from, I think that's Love Actually. With our new IT system, we'll be able to improve service to families. So what this means in terms of a PlotBox implementation is we're able to create contracts anywhere, whether it be in home or on the cemetery grounds or in the office. We're able to give live inventory availability to our customers without having to check records and double check and so on. We're able to give them 360 views of what the cemetery looks like in their home from PlotBox on an iPad. We have a public search facility where all the cemetery's records are available to the public and search for a location and so on. So they're not having to come into the cemetery office, spend time having somebody then go and check records and find it, and then having somebody walk them out to the cemetery and get lost and come back and can't find the grave and all this kind of stuff. So there's tons of walk to grave facilities on the iPhone and all of that stuff. So lots of ways that your customers are going to benefit from the new system. One there from Star Wars. So with our new IT system, clients and staff will be able to easily locate graves. So we've just touched on that with that walk to grave functionality on the phone. With our new IT system from Toy Story here, our jobs will require less paperwork. So that's an absolute key part of what PlotBox does. It digitizes everything. You can even bring all of your paper records into PlotBox through our docs module. So it doesn't mean you never have, you lose access to your documents. You can keep your physical documents. You can then have virtual documents, like a virtual cabinet inside PlotBox. So you can refer to those if you ever need to. You're going to create less paper. You're going to have less weight, better for the environment, all that kind of stuff. But in terms of efficiency, we're seeing PlotBox customers operate at 78% more efficiency, 78% less time doing routine tasks like generating paperwork, paper contracts and so on through the contracts module. So 78% of somebody's time, somebody who writes a lot of contracts, that person's going to be able to do a lot more work, a lot more of value added work rather than pushing paper around department from desk to desk. So that's a big thing there. And then, of course, all about the money. With our new system, payment processes being way more efficient. So that's a process piece there. And as well, then from a commercial point of view, pre-need sales are very heavily enabled. So you're able to sell quicker and then have fewer processes stored because you've got everything that the salesperson might need, whether that be in the cemetery, on the grounds, or in home. They're able to sell, generate contracts wherever they are with live inventory data. So lots of ways. So this was Rookwood. Lots of ways to help softly communicate what's going on with the new system. So these examples here are about what the product can do. What these guys also did was they implemented a bunch of other posters around the phasing of the project. So if the project was in its initial phase, so a scoping phase or a discovery phase and so on, they had posters up around the business saying we're in this stage at the moment, and these are the 5 main things that the business is doing in this stage, and these are the 5 main things that PlotBox are doing for us in this stage. So even if the staff weren't always involved in the meetings and so on, they were able to softly absorb messages from the management team around what's happening. Then you move on to the next stage. At this stage in the process of the project, we're calling it X, Y, or Z. This is what we're doing, this is who's involved from our side, and this is what PlotBox are doing, and so on. And that went on all the way through. So from a very soft point of view, that information was absorbed, and don't underestimate the power of that soft communication. It's very, very effective. They've done really well with that. Okay, so that's about communication. Let's think about listening. So it's an easy one, but it's also very easy to overlook. So we've noticed that communication isn't one way. We've just considered a lot of that stuff. So your stakeholders in finance, would be your grounds crew, your family services, or your admin, they're absolutely guaranteed to have some insights that you don't. They're the ones dealing with the day-to-day challenges. These are the people that are so closest to your data, closest to your processes, closest to your customers. So you need to be prepared to listen to these people. So even if they've got challenging feedback, or you feel like these people don't really need change, you've got to give them the opportunity to speak what they've got to say, and for you then to work out, is this resistance to change, or are there real issues here? It's a real valuable feedback here, because it won't always be resistance to change. So acknowledge that you've listened, you've heard what we're saying, and whether that's pinging them an email, stopping by their office, tapping them on the back at lunch and just saying, listen, I got your feedback, I heard what you said, I don't have an answer right now, but I'm going to give that some thought. That is very, very powerful in terms of letting people know that stuff's appreciated. And if they've heard that you've listened, even if it doesn't go the way they want it to, if they've heard that you've considered it, you're far more likely to have them people re-engage in the future, rather than just kind of shut down and say, oh, well, you never get any feedback, or we're never listened to anyway, so I'm just gonna can't be bothered to say anything anymore. So it stops a lot of that stuff as well. It's very powerful. Okay, so where are we at now? Thinking about empowering the silent. So our cemetery, the customers, they tell us this all the time. They hear a very narrow selection of voices speaking the loudest. We've all got those people in our business. We know who they are. That's just part of the course. They're going to be the very vocal people who seem to want to speak for everybody. but that doesn't mean they speak for everybody. And make sure you get honest opinions from all of those who may not otherwise speak up. Because what happens if you fail to do that? Then you have this, through this cartoon, the meeting that happens after the meeting. Not every, even very well-intentioned staff who have no real gripe can end up unwittingly feeding negativity. Not because they fundamentally disagree with your vision, but because they've not felt comfortable sharing their thoughts in the forum offered. So, you know, you have these group meetings. We've talked about one-to-ones and the importance of that. You need to think about other ways in which to tease information out from these people as well. So think about anonymous polls. So there's a great tool, SurveyMonkey. We use it at PlotBox. It's great for anonymous feedback. You know, genuinely, you know, lets everybody have their say. You know, without the fear of anybody sort of knowing who said it, if that was an issue. So that was SurveyMonkey. So do those polls. But what we suggest is you invest your energy in mentoring, encouraging otherwise silent individuals to speak up. So, you know, put those things in personal development plans where people might be, you know, more of an inclination to shy away from contributing to group sessions and so on. KPI them on it. You know, say, you know, you've got years of experience in this business. You've got great feedback. You really know our data, or you really know our process, or you really know our customer. You really know our community. But we're not getting that benefit of your information out into the wider group because you're not contributing to those group meetings, or you let so and so speak over all the time, whatever it might be. So to encourage these guys to share and to speak up and incentivize them, or reward them, and make it an objective of theirs or something like that. It's a bit of an effort, you know. It's a bit of a long burn thing, but again, it all feeds into culture and so on, and having that kind of sort of collective forum where everybody's opinion is valued. So goldmine of insight if you can put the energy in at the start. It definitely paid dividends further down the line. Okay, testing. So thinking about your assumptions, test these. Again, a very well-known phrase that no battle plan ever survives first contact with the enemy. You know, you think you know what's coming. You set your stall out. You put your troops out. You walk forward 10 paces, and all of a sudden something unexpected happens. Something happens that goes, oh gosh, even with all that planning and we didn't think that this would happen, or we didn't expect so and so to do this, or whatever it might be. So it's no different for cemeteries and planning and implementing digital change. So as you lead your cemetery through change and so on, and you know, you're thinking about the internal, external environment in which your cemetery operates. I think, again, staff, suppliers, you know, think about cash, weather, regulations, politics, competitors. New things will happen, you know, new things will force you to adapt. There's a ton of stuff that's going to happen. If I use an example from the UK right now, there's a bunch of cemetery and crematorium organisations that are going through change processes with us, and you know, some of these external things affect them. So you know, we mentioned their competitors and private organisations. They're moving into new territories. There's a same as it is in the US. You know, high rate of cremation and so on. And these new entrants to the market are forcing these long-established organisations to have to, you know, adapt, become more commercial much more quickly. So lots of things change, and you know, that can go to regulations, you know, things, you know, new laws that come in, you know, weather, you know, there's you know, changing weather patterns and so on, whatever it might be, colder winters or warmer winters or floods or whatever it might be, that can all affect the way we operate and the way we go about our change and so on. So our tip on this one, no lost points having proved an assumption wrong. In fact, it's something that we try to continually do, is to prove our assumptions wrong. So what we mean by that is write down your assumptions. So here's what I want to do. Here's what I want to achieve. Here's who I'm going to have do that. This is the amount of time it's going to take them. And kind of, you know, play devil's advocate to it. Argue against your own assumptions. Try to knock it down. Try to break it down. Ask your colleagues to do that as well. You know, it's kind of like, you know, preparing for a court case. You know, lawyers will do that to, you know, preparing for battle. So set out what you think is going to happen, and then try to argue. Try try to pull your ideas apart. Why might not that work? And then through doing that, through having, you know, a few of the minds in the organization do that, you're going to know you're on the right path. If those people are, you know, generally unable to prove that you're wrong and so on. So that's what you try and do. Just try and, you know, test your assumptions. So we're going to be wrapping up very, very shortly. We're 40 odd minutes there into your day, and appreciate your time and so on. So if you've got questions, keep firing them in through the console on your screen. We're going to get to those just in a moment. So when you think about it, you know, the challenge in front of you isn't about the technology per se. You know, there is definitely some getting used to the technology, making sure that you've got the right technology for you, and, you know, getting your processes right and understanding how to use the tech and all that stuff is really important. But the real challenge isn't about the technology, it's about your people. And good old-fashioned people, they're going to get in your way. They're going to also help you along. And you've got to, while you need a plan for your technology and for your business, you before you have that, you need a plan for your people. So I was talking earlier on about Rookwood Cemetery in Australia. You know, the fundamental thing that they said to us about why we were able to complete a project on a cemetery of that size, the 6th biggest in the world, in under 9 months, was because they had their HR strategy right. They had planned for the time that these people were going to have to work on their change management process, and they had accommodated that change. They had opened up new offices, and I don't mean, you know, off-site or whatever. They just reconfigured their offices, put in new machines, giving people new desks to do certain work, you know, taking book these people out of the business to go and work in a separate office on the cemetery, to go and get this work done, bring in some temporary staff, bring in some, whatever it might be, some work experienced people, whatever it might be, whatever, you know, depends on the job, to get these people alleviated from what they need to do. So you get that strategy right first. You're gonna, you know, you've got your vision, you're able to demonstrate progress, you're able to reward these people. The technology part almost falls into place on its own. You definitely need to start with that people piece. So don't confine yourself to the death care industry for change and inspiration as well. You know, look beyond that. You know, look at other organisations in other industries. If you want more help and advice around change, head over to the PlotBox website, hit the resources page at the top bar. There's a bunch of webinars, recordings on there. There's a bunch of ebooks, blogs and so on around change management and how to get that right from all sorts of perspectives. So really rich resources from that point of view. So I'm going to wrap up here. I'm going to take any questions that you guys might want me to answer. I promise you, if I can't get you an answer on anything right now, then I'm going to do that, get you an answer in the next few days. So if there are any questions, I think Stan and Chris are going to relay those to me, and if I can't, I'll tell you. So thank you.
Yeah, we got a few questions. Thank you very much, Neil. You talk about communication a lot, and getting, you know, it starts with the people at the top. What if you work for a cemetery where they've never really had group meetings or really were concerned what everyone thought about? You have suggestions for them to how to reach the people, like, hey, we have ideas, listen to us.
You know, there's several ways. I mean, I have to come back to one of the first points. Start with a vision, and this vision, I mean, start by define what you want to happen within the organization, and I mean that's the executive team, the senior management team, whatever it might be. Define what you're trying to do, and in order then, so if you're in an organization that's not had those group meetings or those one-to-one meetings, start with those. Once you've got your vision, outline the vision, and then over a period of time, whether you do these one-to-ones or these group meetings weekly or monthly or whatever it might be, start raising some of those topics, the one-to-ones especially, that, you know, that probably the safest place to start, because you're able then to have tailored conversations to each individual's needs. So if you've got an individual that's, you know, very progressive in their mindset and knows, you know, is chomping at the bit for change, the conversation you're going to have with that person is very different to maybe the person that's worked there for 45 years. very, very resistant to change, and feels like they can't operate technology. So you're going to need to kind of pitch and hear your not your argument, but your point of view, and have those conversations on a one-to-one basis first. Then probably introduce the group conversations once you've done a 1, 2, 3, or 4 of those one-to-one meetings, in order that the scene's set, and broadly, hopefully, you've got some kind of consensus amongst all of your teams. So start with the one-to-ones, and then move to the group meetings probably after a couple of weeks or so.
Okay, great. And then we have another question here. When we're hiring people going forward, how can we best phrase questions about their comfort level with new technology?
It's a very good question. I would think, because I mean, we struggle with this too. Not necessarily in terms of the technology question, but when you're bringing people into a business, how do you know what they're telling you is the truth? So I would, sometimes you're rushing for recruitment, and you feel like you need to make an appointment very soon. Other times you feel like you've got more time on your hands. I would ask for evidence outside of from their professional point of view. Try to get beneath what they're telling you on their CV or in their interview. So have the interview. Try and get examples from their personal life around how they adopt technology. Do you exercise? Do you run? What do you do? And then think, did you use any technology in that? So thinking about health apps and so on. Just use these leading questions around, what do you like doing? I'll read. Did you ever use the Kindle? Do you ever use ebooks or anything, or is it always paper books? And there's no right or wrong answer, but just by stepping into those technology questions that that go beyond the CV can sometimes be very revealing. And of course, I mentioned there earlier, sometimes you're in a rush of recruitment, and I get that, and other times you're not. But the longer you can run a recruitment process, and I agree, there definitely are some time sensitivities around recruitment and trying to get that done quickly, but the longer you can do a process and the more touch points you can have within a process, and I don't mean holding sort of several interviews. If it's a very senior position, you might want to spend some time with that person outside of a formal interview process, get them on, for the right person in the right circumstances, get them on the golf course, get them out for dinner and so on, where you can really start probing a certain topic. And I don't mean interrogate them, but just have a, create a forum outside of the traditional interview, where somebody might start to offer up probably more honest reflections. It's not always possible, but that's a couple of things you can try there. But I appreciate that can be a difficult one, because they're ultimately trying to get the job, and that they will have their guard up.
Okay, another question. If you had to make one argument, say you had just about 5 minutes, like, okay, tell me why we should upgrade to the cloud. What would that be if you really just only had a limited time to say it? What would your points be right quickly to do that?
No worries. So great question. Ultimately, cemeteries, if I had to distill down all the conversations we've had with cemeteries, I would say that through moving to the cloud, and not just the cloud, but by going through a data verification process. So a service like having all your records validated and put into a digital format. I don't mean migrating bad records into a new system. That's a totally different thing. Moving your data to the cloud, but cleaning that data up through that process, identifying the risks, the problem records, and validating records, whether right, you're going to be able to trust your data. So move to the cloud, yes, but don't bring across bad data into the cloud. Before you end up migrating to the cloud, have the data cleaned up as best you can. It just means that you're going to de-risk the operation. So, double selling plots or whatever it might be, risk of lawsuit, that kind of thing. You're going to operate more effectively and efficiently, because, you don't have to keep wondering, is the record I'm looking at accurate? It's accurate because you've been through that cleanup process. So you're going to save time there, and you're going to be able to sell quicker, because you people that are selling have accurate live inventory. They haven't got to go back and double check everything. So you're going to grow quicker, you're going to de-risk, and you're going to be more efficient. I mentioned there earlier on, one of our customers in California, they're operating at 78% less time in terms of generating contracts because they've moved to cloud computing and they can trust the data, they can trust the inventory that's available there. So ultimately, it's about trusting your data.
All right, have a little bit of a long one here, but it's a good one.
No worries.
You mentioned, okay, you mentioned changing to digital provides ways for customers to search for a loved one without going into the cemetery office. Our cemetery has not done anything to make this easier for customers because the thought by management is that having the families come into the office shows them the services we can provide them and gives us an opportunity to find out if there is anything we can do for them, such as answering their questions of possibly leading to a pre-need sale in the long run. Do you have a point about dispelling that mindset so management may consider giving customers the ability to find their loved ones on their own? Thank you.
No worries. Great question. So what, if we think about service levels and what we're trying to do, if we feel like that bringing our customers into our office and having them wait online, then to the secretary or to the receptionist or whoever it might be, that then have them go and find the record, run off downstairs into the vault, open up the books. Sometimes that can take an hour. Sometimes it takes 5 minutes. Sometimes it takes 20 minutes. But if we think that's good service around, giving people access, because on the off chance we might be able to flog them something in the process, we kind of fool in ourselves. So let me put it a different way. So if you have all your records online and they're available digitally, you're able to then type in Mary Smith in cemetery A down the road. Having something like PlotBox is going to give them access to the Google directions to the cemetery, and then an actual pathway map through the cemetery to the exact plot, not just the cemetery, but to the exact plot. So what you're able to do there is give them better service, get them what they're looking for more quickly, give them a better experience, and if there are ways to think about how then you might be able to, if the commercial angle is important, yes, you can have you can find ways to put people into the cemetery grounds to engage them in the appropriate ways. But with technology, we're able to do things like send flowers to a grave as well. So when somebody looks up that record on an app and says, okay, so I don't have to go into the office here anymore, but there's a button right there on the phone to order flowers or order a grave cleaning service or maintenance request or whatever like that, you're able to then initiate a commercial relationship with the site visitor then. So this is all stuff that's coming, and it is a different mindset. I get that, but there's I think if you're going to offer people a good experience and not have them wait, and then try to sell them something in the process, if they have a good experience of the cemetery, and you've got your people trained the right way, and your marketing and your salespeople primed in the right fashion, you're only going to sell more by having a positive experience of what you're doing on the cemetery, not just in terms of having them buy pre-need, but also through those added services that I mentioned there on the app as well. So grave cleaning services or flower delivery or something, and the cemetery then picking up a margin of those, some of the males, the money from those flower sales as well. So that's all stuff that's coming down the line, but it does take a different mindset. Definitely does.
Okay, and we have one more. Should a cemetery hire a dedicated technology person or use the resources or the people they already have on staff?
Okay, another great question. So it completely depends on your situation. So there are two cemeteries, very large cemeteries that we've just done projects with. So I mentioned Rookwood General Cemetery in Australia. Now, those guys didn't bring in any more expertise in terms of a technology lead. They already had people in the business that could do that part in terms of the project management and so on. There's another big cemetery we work with in Los Angeles who are just in the process of going live with us. Now, they have brought in a technology consultant to help them with that process, because they felt like the resources they had internally, not that they couldn't, fund the resources, but they didn't feel like it was the right thing for them to do with the staff that they had. So it just needs you to be honest with yourselves. The answer for everybody would be different, but again, start with that vision and have that HR plan in place. So it will be different for everybody.
All right, Neil, that will wrap it up. We thank you very much for a very informative webinar. You can visit AmericanFuneralDirector.com and click on the webinar tab to sign up for our future webinars. While you are on our site, please also check out the information on our Cremation Innovators Summit, May 1st in Philadelphia, and our other upcoming events. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar today, and be sure to keep an eye out for our follow-up email, which will include today's webinar recording. And thank you very much, Neil.
You're welcome. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Bye-bye.